the inside story on the issues that affect you and your community. This is Local 12 Newsmakers.
Good morning and welcome to Local 12 Newsmakers. We turn our attention this morning to the contest for leadership of Hamilton County, the central county of our region. For the last 4 years, the three-person Hamilton County Commission has been led by a Democratic majority with Todd Portune and David Pepper. That marked the first time in over 40 years Democrats had a majority. This year, David Pepper is running statewide for Auditor of Ohio, opening not just his seat, but throwing the majority control of county commission into the hands of the voters. This at a time that continuing unemployment and economic instability have reduced the revenues of government units across the country and forced major reductions in operating funds, meaning cuts in staff and services. That national trend is compounded by Hamilton County, because the full impact of the financially disastrous stadium deals has come due, placing the very solvency of the county in doubt. I am joined this morning for the entire half hour by the candidates for Hamilton County Commission. Chris Monzel is currently a member of Cincinnati City Council. He has served on that body for 8 years during this past decade. He is an engineer with degrees from Purdue and the University of Cincinnati. He also has a master's in public policy from Harvard. Mr. Monzel has spent his professional career as an engineer at GE. He lives with his family in Spring Grove Village in the city of Cincinnati. Jim Tarbell served on Cincinnati City Council from 1998 until 2007, including 2 years as vice mayor. Mr. Tarbell has created and run a wide variety of entertainment businesses and restaurants over his career as a small business person. He and his wife live in Pendleton District of downtown Cincinnati, and Jim is now the Community Development Officer for SHP Leading Design. So both of you, welcome back to Newsmakers. Chris, let's start with you. You know, the burning issue right now for all government units, as I tried to say, was budget issues. The administration earlier this week released its recommendations for what to do with the operating budget. And one of the things caught my attention, and that is a cut of 3 more people from the coroner's staff. And you know, everybody wants to say we got to support police and fight crime. Well, the coroner is critical to that. Is this because if they're not going to be able to do DNA research on certain types of cases, everything's going to get backed up? Do you approve of that sort of cut? If you were on the county commission, would you accept that from the administration?
Well, I think what we have to look at is the way the budget is handled. Basically, the county commissioners pass the budgets for each of the departments, and then the department determines how they want to use the amount that they're given. I would hope that as an ex-county commissioner, I could sit down with the coroner's office and say, well, is there other ways that we can come up with the savings without cutting people? And I think that's the problem. A lot of times we just say, well, they're going to get cut so many thousands of dollars, and thus the department comes back and says, well, we're going to lose 3 people. And I think what we need to have is a better discussion there to say, are there other cost-saving measures?
So are you indicating that you think the coroner's office could find the amount of money they need to cut, which is pretty substantial if it's 3 people? These are professionals. These are people doing pretty sophisticated testing. Are you saying there's that kind of waste someplace else in that budget?
Definitely. I think there's a lot of waste and inefficiency within the government of Hamilton County. And so for me, that's the job that the county commissioners can help with those specific elected office holders, because all of them are separately elected. Right. So meeting with them, talking to them, I mean, the sheriff is doing that with the county commissioners. We're working together to do that with some of his assets. Well, we need to do the same thing with all the other elected office holders, and that's what I would like to do with the county coroner. Now, you know, the amount and what it's going to come down to, I don't know off the top of my head, but I think we need to have that discussion before we start saying we're going to just cut people.
Jim?
Well, I'm not encouraged by that recommendation. I would really want to work as hard as possible to keep their current complement intact. I think that the coroner's office right now is very unique. I mean, thanks in large part to Odell Owens. You really didn't know a whole lot about the coroner's office before he took over, and he's done an extraordinary job of making it more relevant. He's actually taken it up a couple steps in terms of using it for public relations vehicle for an educational
sort of a
vehicle.
bully pulpit.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly what people in those positions ought to be doing, in addition to the routine testing and that sort of thing, the reports that they do. So I wouldn't want to go there in a hurry. I'd want to do everything possible to preserve their complement of employees.
Here's another aspect of this story as I understand it. What was revealed was that Odell Owens, who has moved on to be the president of Cincinnati State, is still drawing that salary. Now, I understood when he first left that there was going to be a little bit of overlap,
Right.
but we're now 6-7 weeks past that. If you were in the commission's office, what would be your reaction to that, Jim?
Well, it didn't sound very good. I mean, all I know about that is what I read in the paper yesterday, and the way it was presented is a little troubling. I think it's something that ought to be addressed.
Chris?
Yeah, I agree. I think that a little overlap is okay, but going into 2 months is just not.
And here's the other question, because
Right.
people don't necessarily understand about the commission. The commission is not like city council.
Correct.
It's a very different body with different responsibilities and powers. Does the commission have the ability to step in on one of these independently elected offices and say, you can't do that anymore?
We can, I think, from a standpoint, you're right. City council is totally different. It's a legislative body. The county commission is an executive body, more involved with program management than they are with passing legislation. From the standpoint of what the roles and responsibilities between the other elected office holders, the 8 row offices and the county commissions, it comes into the budget aspect of it. And we could cut the budget and say, well, we're going to cut out that salary for those 2-3 months.
If you save that salary, you might be able to save some of these other people.
Absolutely.
Okay, Jim, I want to move on to something else. Everybody is concerned about the jail facility. There's been 2 efforts to pass bond issues to build a new jail. Both of them have failed, basically out of there. I don't think anybody has the stomach to go back and try that one again. You have proposed that we look at programs that focus on people with addiction and with mental illness who end up in very high proportions in our justice system. My question is not whether there's good, bad, or indifferent. My question is there money actually to be saved there? Is there significant money by supporting those kinds of programs rather than jail beds? Is there money to be saved?
Well, long term, for sure. I mean, the sooner you get to the crux of the problem, the sooner you're going to have efficiencies and you're going to be saving money. I'm not touting this, though, as a vehicle to save money. I'm touting it as a vehicle to be more effective with the treatment and the diagnosis of people coming into the jail system. I don't think we're anywhere near close to where we need to be to make that more effective. And but back to your original question, I think over time, yes. I mean, if we end up intervening with people who have addiction and mental health problems, the sooner we do that, the sooner their problems are going to be arrested or attended to, and they'll be productive. So that translates into saving money eventually.
Chris, on your website, it's not directly referencing this, but you refer to the sort of social programs that were part of the second proposal on the jail, which is related to this. You refer to these as quote-unquote boondoggles. Do you support the drug court? Do you support the mental health courts that have been created?
Yes, because they're already in existence. What the bond issue that failed a few years back for the jail tax was going above and beyond that. And according to what Jim's proposal is, we have Talbert House. We have some of these places already in existence that we're funding to do this work. So for me, I think that we need to look at the bigger issues of a jail facility, which we don't have the money to build right now. And how do we do that? How do we think outside the box to come up with a solution? Which I'm proposing is to work with Warren County and Claremont County, who are also looking at less jail beds, and seeing if we could get a regional facility together that we could use economies of scale to leverage that opportunity.
I want to be clear about that. Are you talking about building a single new efficient facility, or are you talking about just sharing the beds that already exist?
To build a new facility.
Build a new facility. by those three counties.
Yes, exactly.
Jim, what do you think?
Well, the most recent and probably the most significant time that we worked with the other counties on jail space, we lost millions of dollars. I don't think that that's the system that we want to be centralizing. It's way too complicated, and where you need continuity the most is certainly with the jail system. You know who's coming and going in your system and what's specific to your jurisdiction. I can't imagine that we would gain by doing that.
Just very quickly, have you ever had a conversation with the sheriff about this?
No, I have not.
Okay. Let's go.
I have.
You have?
Yeah, no way. No interest.
This doesn't surprise me. Okay. The looming issue out there that whichever one of you is elected is going to have to face is the question not just of the ongoing operating budget and the squeeze because of the economy at the moment, but it's that stadium situation. And we are now facing these huge deficits that fall back on the operating deficit if we can't pay them with the sales tax. Whatever the gap is, we are responsible for those. Chris, what is your proposal to deal with this gap as it's going to expose itself this coming year and future years?
Yeah, the gap, that's really what's going to drive Hamilton County to the brink of bankruptcy if we don't address it sooner than later. We're looking at $10 million next year, up to $50 million in the future years. So we have to do something, and I think just doing one solution is not the answer. You can't just solve it with one silver bullet.
Okay.
You're going to have to do a multi-pronged approach. First off, you got to deal with the Bengals. I think we have to sit at the table with them. They've put an offer on the table of looking at renegotiating the lease, which ended up with about $3 million in savings for the county. We never countered, and I think we have to have some counteroffer and start a true negotiation with them since they were willing to put one on the table to begin with. Secondly, I think we do have to look at our general fund and squeeze out as much waste and inefficiency there to get some money to help out. Third, I believe the current county commissioners believe that the casino revenue can help plug the hole as well. And then fourth, I think we have to grow the pie. We got to bring more jobs and more families living in Hamilton County to bring up the amount of revenue that we're bringing in. I mean, it's a multi-pronged approach, and not just going to be one answer that's going to solve this problem.
Jim, you have said that one of the elements that you would propose would be to stop the property tax rollback that was part of this.
Yeah.
First off, how much would that plug of this problem, and what other things? It wouldn't solve everything.
Right.
What other things would have to be part of this?
Well, what it does, I think as much as anything, as important as any aspect of this, is that it puts pressure on the teams. We're not going to, if you expect the teams to take the lead in solving this crisis, you're crazy, but if you've got a program that really puts pressure on them, yeah, I think they are vulnerable, if not interested. Certainly the Reds, I'm not so sure about the Bengals. But if you've got a program like rescinding the tax rollback, at least on a temporary basis, it puts enormous pressure on the teams to play their part. Now you've got the commissioners on board taking the heat. You've got the public involved, and I'm sure, knowing the management ownership of the Reds as I do, that they will respond affirmatively. That puts, and I purposely leaving the Bengals out till the end because it's kind of been the history. I don't think they'll be able to resist that kind of pressure.
Chris, under any circumstances, can you see having to take a step back on that property tax? I know you see that as a
tax increase.
Increase.
Exactly.
Can we ever, whatever you call it,
Right.
tax increase or just going back to the old tax level, I don't care what you call it, can you ever see that happening? Can you ever support that?
No, I can't. You can't solve this problem by raising taxes, especially in this recession that we're in. But most importantly, the idea has already been vetted out there. Commissioner Pepper has put it forward. Both Hartman and Portune have said they don't support it. So it's dead on arrival. So this idea is not going to work. Secondly, it doesn't give enough money to it. And thirdly, it's breaking a promise to the voters.
Well, it's one of, it could be part of a multi. It doesn't solve anything.
Right, it doesn't solve
just
the whole
as you
thing.
said, it
Right.
has to be multi.
Right.
Are you willing to allow the county to go into bankruptcy?
No, I do not want the county to go into bankruptcy.
You don't want it, but what if the only choice is to raise that tax or to restore that tax?
As I said, there's several options out there that we can look at. One other option I didn't bring up is looking at the assets that we own as a county and that we could sell off and raise money that way, which I think is another avenue that we need to look at.
Jim, do you want to respond?
No, we're talking about upwards of $10 million a year. You're not going to get that kind of money from any source out there in county resources. This is so integral to a fundamental solution. It puts pressure where pressure needs to be put. The Reds or the Bengals are not going to take the lead. They never have. They never will. By the way, if Mr. Brown wants to get out of the lease, that's the deal he's put on the table, getting out of the lease. Well, then let him buy the bonds. You know, then we own the stadium. Then he can go, and we'll go to the NFL, and we'll get a team that wins for a change.
Well, that's a whole other set of questions.
It's a whole other set, but you know, it's part of the big picture of what's practical about the Bengals and the role they're going to play.
Okay.
But this is it prevents our having to worry about things like bankruptcy, and you know, to me, it's the only honest way.
If you change the tax, how much would that bring in?
About half of what's owed.
Only 50%.
Yeah.
You
Well,
both
I wouldn't
agree
say
on
only 50%. We don't have anything.
No,
right
no,
now.
well, no.
So it's a huge step to getting it resolved. And once again, it gets us into a much better position right away. And to the point of the commissioners currently, 2 of the 3 of them have weighed in against this. Well, do you think that Tarbell taking the lead, and it's front and center of my platform, and I get elected, that's not a mandate for that to be done, the commissioners wouldn't be able to stand that for 5 minutes. You know, they'd have to come on board. Now they're off the hook. They don't want to be on the hook right now is why they're not supporting it.
We have to take a break. I'm on the hook for some things, and we'll come right back. Stay tuned. Chris Monzel and Jim Tarbell will return after a short break. Welcome back. I am joined this morning by the 2 candidates for Hamilton County Commission, Republican Chris Monzel and Democrat Jim Tarbell. One of the things that broke in the paper, I don't know, a week ago, 10 days ago, was, and Jim, let's start with you this time, is the decision by the Board of Developmental Disabilities to use about $1 million to give bonuses to employees. Now, everybody's opposed to that. Both of you have said that. All right. But what that seems to me that the underlying issue that really talks about is the fragmentation of control mechanisms in the county. Are you willing to take a look at some sort of reform of the structure of county government to put more responsibility on the commission to really be able or centralize and be able to control this kind of thing in the future? I mean, I know everybody's opposed to this one, but it's ultimately a structural question because of the fragmentation of our government.
Well, you know, for as long as I can remember, the elected officials have not been paying attention to who they put on these boards, not nearly as much as they should. It's fundamental to the success of our system, whether it's county or city. The commissioners, members of council, the mayor have extraordinary power in their appointments on these different boards. The way our system works, those boards are integral to our success, and they have been historically, but I don't think, and I know I go way back in that respect. I mean, just back to when I was a kid, and my father was involved in local politics, and I began to become aware of people that are on these boards because they were so important. And we always had the best and brightest on these boards. I think we've gotten away from that. I think institutional memory is suffering. The knowledge of how important those boards are is secondary, and we're not getting the best
So people. You see it as who is appointed rather than a structural issue?
Yeah, I think there are structural things that have to be revisited at this point in time. We've got 48 different jurisdictions in the county, 48 different neighborhoods in the city. We talked about government restructuring in '72 in Cincinnati. Right. In the meantime, Indianapolis, Columbus, Lexington.
That's a
Louisville
different
have done it.
question. That's actually merger of government. I was just looking at county government. Let me go over to Chris and hear from Chris.
Yeah, the buck stops with the county commissioners. I mean, they're the ones that appoint these boards.
In theory,
but in this regard, they're the ones that appointed these boards, and I know that we all disagree that they shouldn't have done the bonuses. We do have to put some type of tighter control on
how can you do that?
Well, we'd have to look at the legislation from a state
So
perspective.
Just to help people understand, you would have to get state legislation?
The Board of County Commissioners do not pass any legislation. So everything that we do is through the Ohio House and Senate. So we have to get their changes of the legislation in order for us to enforce it. So therefore, yes, if we want to get tighter controls, we're going to have to ask for that through our legislation at the State House. And I think that's something to look into to see how we can do that so we can get more accountability, because having this happen, $1 million, and when we're talking about laying off coroner's office and all these other types of critical programs for the county, it's ridiculous.
Over the last 18 months, led primarily by Todd Portune, but supported by all three of the commissioners, was this commission to review whether there's an alternative form of county government, not merger, not unigov, not that, but into a charter form of government. Right. Would you support a further exploration and look at charter forms of government for the county to be able to solve some of these problems?
Well, just so people understand what charter means. When a county becomes a charter government, that means it has the power to pass its own laws and its own legislation. There's only a few within Ohio, I think.
Summit, Cuyahoga is instituting. Summit's been doing it since '79.
Out of the '88. So to me, I do not support going into a charter form of government. Okay. To me, I think that we have the current system in place, and that's looking at ways to cut and make inefficient processes more efficiently. Those are things that we need to focus on, not creating a charter form of government where county will now be passing laws that will affect all of our citizens.
Jim.
Well, I certainly wouldn't look at it. I mean, I'll go back to those other jurisdictions I just mentioned. Indianapolis, Columbus, Lexington, Louisville have all instituted some changes that are similar in this context, and all relative to their resources are doing better than we are. We're looking to them, as a role model for a lot of solutions, and we go on to others, to Portland and Seattle and now St. Louis and Pittsburgh. We're sending people there to look at their systems. We've got to be looking at some of this streamlining, I think, if we're going to get ahead.
Okay, just about out of time. So very quickly on this next one, and I'm not sure which one of you, but I'm sure both of you support economic development, drawing more people into the county, increasing tax revenues that way, et cetera, et cetera. Related to that, the concrete thing is, do we invest in an expanded Port Authority? And should the county be putting dollars, especially in the Port Authority? This has been the promise. The director announced their resignation. The head of the brownfields has left. We've got a crippled Port Authority now. Should the county be investing in a stronger Port Authority?
Absolutely. I think if you look at Northern Kentucky and how well they've been doing, how they did it was having an outside agency, the Triad, doing economic development for those three counties. Well, the same thing should be happening over here. Let's get out of the red tape and bureaucracy of county administration and city hall and do economic development through the Port Authority. I think it's a great opportunity for us to be able to compete with these other regions that are doing much better than us by allowing the Port Authority to do that economic development. And to me, I think it is important, and we need to.
And are you interested in finding dollars in this budget situation to do that?
If I was on the current county commission, yes, I would try to find dollars to do that, because I think it is. I mean, we got some great board members on there, very involved in the community here in the area, and we need them to get the job done.
Jim.
Yeah, very, very much supportive, and to piggyback on this last sentence, Otto Buttig is the chair of the county of the current Port Authority, and a strong community leader, Tom Williams, who's head of the Cincinnati Business Committee, similar category. We got a good start there. If we put more emphasis on it, we'll probably expand the board, which provides an opportunity of bringing some more stronger leaders on. So much of it depends on what that leadership is and whether it bridges the gap between government and business, community and leaders in other parts of the community.
Okay. Thank you very much for being here this morning. We'll be with you on November 2nd on election night as always, but As we get closer to Election Day, I want to remind everyone that this interview and all the campaign interviews we have conducted since Labor Day can be found online at local12.com. The site's been redesigned, so click on Programming, scroll down to Newsmakers, and click there. Thank you for making Newsmakers a part of your Sunday morning. Next week, Steve Shabbat and Steve Driehaus, the candidates for Congress in the 1st Ohio District. Have a good week.